I really do believe in my bones that our future is going to be so bright. And that's what I was shown in this mushroom ceremony. I was like, sweet.
Yeah, 100%. And it's not going to be an easy path to get there. There is going to be chaos. Transformation is in the fire, and there's going to be that fire and that burning away in order for that to be possible, for this vision that we can see in this future that we can see for humanity and for our planet. But first, there's going to be destruction, and destruction is never easy.
Can't be contained.
That's what I'm talking about. So 2019, we dropped in and we were like, we're going to be friends. It's going to be great. And then we haven't seen each other in 3 years.
Yeah, we were so stoked. And then the world just, shut down for a while.
Did you like that? Did you like COVID? That's a weird question, but did you like?
Do you know what's so interesting? COVID now, I'm actually able to have enough distance from it that I've been able to start processing some of the trauma from it in therapy. Because you know how we have to have that distance to usually be able to see some of the patterns, some of the ways that really impacted us at a core level. Yeah. And just about a month ago, I had my first COVID trauma come up in therapy where I was...
CT. She's got a CT. Level 10 CT. Get her in.
Where I had this deep somatic experience of what it was like when my partner was actually traveling abroad and he was having trouble booking flights and getting back home. I was talking to my family in Canada and they were still like, everything's open here. Everything's totally fine. And LA was one of the first places that had cases that started getting shut down in the US. And so here I was telling my family, like, the grocery stores are empty here. You go to the store right now, you make sure you have groceries, make sure you have toilet paper, because I actually need toilet paper. I'm not trying to hoard it, and I cannot get toilet paper anywhere right now. So my mom's like looking for toilet paper for me in Canada to FedEx it to me.
Oh my God,
and
it's literally wild.
They got very prepared. Yeah. And then, that whole panic, I had it come up in this somatic experience. Yeah, just a month ago.
I said that to Eric the other day. I said, are we just moving on? Is the whole world just moving on and pretending like that didn't just happen? Like, it was so intense. And then it was like, oh, we done now. And it is interesting because collectively there is trauma to process. Like, yes. There's a whole freaking industry. COVID trauma relief.
Yes.
COVID trauma relief. Looking for a new niche, okay? I think I just made
that's a big one, And I mean, these kids who went through that too.
I literally can't imagine.
I feel like they're going to be processing so much in the coming years and when they're older from that time.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? It's interesting. I look back on it and there was a part of it that I loved. Mm-hmm. Eric and I were like, peace, we're out. And he bought a new truck and we just road tripped and went to mountain towns and had the best time, communed with nature, just explored. We were with each other. I'm like, this is great.
Same.
I'm like, I could do this all day long. Yes. And then there was also a very hard part of it, being a business owner in that time period was challenging. But yeah, I always find it interesting of like people's personal experiences during it. Like some people, it was like the worst thing that they've ever experienced, and other people are like, I loved it. Like my best friend, she's an introvert, and she's like, this is my time to shine.
I'm an introvert as well, also an introvert. And at the time, I had been traveling so much, like right before COVID, I was on planes every week, and to just have that space to be at home. And I would literally lay outside, especially in the early days. We were quarantining with my best friend. So we were in a shared house and we would lay outside for hours. Also, a very successful business owner that on a Monday afternoon, we'd usually be working, but instead we were watching the clouds go by like we were delighted children just rolling around in the grass. And there's something beautiful about that I really deeply appreciate as well.
There is. It's like, how can we extract all of the goodness of what we loved about that time period? But that's life in general. Like every single crunch we go through, every rub, every contraction is like, how can we extract the pieces that we actually truly love?
Yes.
Reconnecting to nature, being with people, being in community.
Yes, I have not gone back to being on planes as much as I used to. And I actually did take what I loved about those days and have applied them as much as I can to life now, although it does feel like we're in a very fast-paced experience at the moment, especially with technologies that are being released that I feel are just going to keep feeling like time is accelerated for all of us.
What'd you do with all the toilet paper?
You know, I felt like I never had a big enough stash. I was not abundant in toilet paper, but I was very happy to have a roll FedEx to me from Canada.
A roll.
Maybe a few rolls.
She's like, this is 2 ply, but I'm going to make it 1 ply because this shit is not abundant right now.
It was crazy. Yeah. Just like running around trying to source supplies. We were part of a little community group and we were all trying to, divide and conquer, go out and try to find different supplies. And we'd be messaging each other like, I've got a dozen eggs. I found a dozen eggs. And somebody else would be like, I got strawberries.
It's like a video game. Like we were straight up in a video game.
Yeah.
So I remember going to my friend's house and picking up one of those N95 masks, being like, I'm safe. I'm all right.
I had a lot of those actually because I care a lot about air quality. I have air filters in every space in my house. I have a whole home air filtration system. And when there are wildfires, I wear the N95 mask. So I had masks when no one could get masks. And I'm like, I need some masks and other people need masks. And who's highest risk? And this is so weird.
Oh my God.
But I was
so good.
Yeah, I
Just
did
a
have the mask
dealer.
styled
I'm
in.
just dealing masks out of my basement. That's how you're making your millions these days. So the other day, you and I had an impromptu connection chat, which I really loved. I love when I get to spend time and connect with you. It's so beautiful. And one of the big reasons why I'm like, we got to get you on the Can't Be Contained show is because I just love the way you do think about the future and your visions and the way that you think so outside of the box in so many of the things that you do. And you're such a multidimensional, multi-talented human. So what do you see for the future with the technology integration and things speeding up and us being more connected yet less connected in social aspects? I'm curious, what are you seeing over there in your third eye?
Had so many visions about this, actually, not even just recently, but for a very long time, like since I was a kid.
Are you like a starseed child situation?
I try not to put labels on things like that. Some people are like, you're a starseed. I'm like, I don't want to take on too many labels because to me, that's part of the not being contained. Although sometimes labels are very, very helpful and sometimes we do need them. And so I feel like I've gotten glimpses of this future throughout my life. And even when I was building my first company, which was the production company, we were doing a lot of work in 360-degree technology. So full 360 VR style documentaries and video game experiences. And at that time, I could really see what was coming. And I wasn't sure if it was coming in 5 years or 10 years. And now it's been about 15 years. And in the last few years, I've really been in the listening of what that's like, not just from what's happening externally, but just the energies as well, and the sensations and the underlying energies and currents beneath what's happening. And I think things are going to be very accelerated. Like what we are about to see happen in the next decade is going to be like the equivalent of 1,000 years of human progress and innovation. And it's going to happen in such a collapsed time. And like, how do we deal with that? And I think this is also part of the reason why there has been this mass awakening of people knowing that they need to take care of their nervous systems, knowing that they need to slow down, that we need to look inward. The development of emotional intelligence in our generation and the next generation, that feels huge. When I sit down with my grandparents and I experience where they're at and how they saw the world and what has been repressed and hidden and what they didn't get support with because there was shame and stigma around something like going to therapy. People didn't do that so much. And everything is interconnected. So I think we're doing this work and we need to be doing this work now, the healing work, the very deep embodiment work, the nervous system regulation work, to prepare for what's coming. And then AI brings something really unique into the situation. My sense of AI is that AI is going to force change and force things to break that people have been trying to change for a long time. So if we look at something like job displacement or people losing jobs because of AI, what's that going to do? Well, it might force something like a universal basic income that's been tested in places like the Scandinavian countries, also in Canada, where we're from. And I think that is really interesting too. AI's power to potentially break a lot of things that honestly aren't working for everybody anyway. And I think we have an opportunity. And we have an opportunity in co-creation and collaboration with AI to create a more equitable world. And it's going to be what we choose to do and what we're choosing to do now in these early days. And that's interesting. So I actually feel quite hopeful about the possibilities, but we also need to collectively embody hope.
That's it.
We have to embody hope. If we are embodying the fear of what's coming and robots taking over, AI is going to destroy the world.
It's so dramatic right now.
It's so dramatic. And if that's what's in our system and we're just in the fear, we are going to move towards that as the path. More of us need to step into the embodiment of hope and what's possible with AI.
Absolutely. So I was in Idlewild on the weekend, and we've talked about how amazing Idlewild is. And Eric has property up there. It's like our second home. And we did a mushroom journey. And one of the things that came through on the mushroom journey is consciousness needs to evolve. If technology is going to evolve at the rate it's evolving, which it is, and there's no stopping that, consciousness needs to evolve at a similar. It needs to have rapid consciousness needs to rapidly increase.
Yes,
And
accelerated.
I think the contrast and those two things not being congruent is going to cause some resistance and some rubs. But I'm with you. I am also so hopeful of the future. Like I actually do believe in my soul, in my bones, that the new children that are coming into the world right now are like, whoa. Like their level of consciousness is just like so incredible. And that's inspiring to me. And so as all of this new technology is evolving and then we have new consciousness evolving, I really do believe in my bones that our future is going to be so bright. And that's what I was shown in this mushroom ceremony. I was like, sweet.
Yeah, 100%. And it's not going to be an easy path to get there. There is going to be chaos. Transformation is in the fire, and there's going to be that fire and that burning away in order for that to be possible, for this vision that we can see in this future that we can see for humanity and for our planet. But first, there's going to be destruction, and destruction is never easy. And we know this because we've allowed ourselves to stand in the fire and to be initiated 100%. And to go through those changes, but not everybody has. And so I think there's going to be this deep initiation for humanity. And I have a lot of faith and a lot of hope.
I feel like it's already happening.
It's happening.
Like I feel
people
like
are waking up.
I feel like people are losing their shit and finding their light at a greater rate than ever before.
Yes. 10 years ago, right, when around the time that you and I connected, and I think you were already running your business at the time as well, I remember when I would talk about my meditation and breathwork practices, I got a lot of looks.
This bitch is crazy.
Yeah. People would look at me like I was the most woo person on the planet. And then, it started to take root and a lot more people started doing it. A lot of people started talking about it. I remember business leaders and people coming out as meditators. And now everybody meditates.
Everyone and their dog meditates. Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone's tried meditation. And I do feel like we're just in that space where it's accelerated and that our consciousness is also expanding at a very accelerated rate.
Yeah, it's going to be so exciting. Like I genuinely am excited for the future. I think part of like becoming an entrepreneur and doing things in my own way, and I just had this like feeling when I was in high school. I'm like, I'm not going to post-secondary university. Like, I'm not doing that. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, it is like, I was so repelled by the idea of doing that. And I've always had this feeling of like, no, the way it's set up right now isn't like, I never put words to it, but it was always a felt sense in my system that the way that it's set up right now is there's such a better way.
There's such a better way. That's another thing that AI is going to break is our education system that's so broken.
Thank God.
That isn't working.
Like I'm not sending my kids to school. That's crazy.
There's a kid who, no, I saw this video on Instagram of a kid who had a like 3D printer setup that did his handwriting, and it was paired with ChatGPT, and it was actually writing his homework for him.
Dude.
It's another thing that AI is going to break. People have been trying to change the education system for years.
Yeah.
Activists have been working tirelessly. And I do give a shout out to the activists and especially to BIPOC activists who have really been leading change and trying to get change implemented in so many areas of our lives and the way society is set up for a really long time.
Yeah.
And AI, I think, is going to be that wrecking ball that comes through the education system. Because if kids can just have ChatGPT do their homework, what the fuck is the point of going to school?
Wrecking ball. Freaking Miley Cyrus. I love you. Love you.
Love you, Miley.
Eric and I were at dinner last night and we were talking about how the school system, he hated school. He's so freaking smart in so many ways, but the way in which education is set up, it made him feel like he was an idiot. You know, when he was in grade 2, he couldn't read as fast as the other kids, so they held him back. And then that imprinted this whole thing in him that I can't read well, I can't write well. And he really can. But it was like that initial imprint so early. It makes me wonder the possibility and the potential when we take the barriers off children and we let them follow what they're here to do and we let them follow their soul curriculum and their unique genius, how the consciousness will rapidly increase because we're not trying to fit kids into you have to do this and you have to be like this.
Yeah. And it's been so much about the mind and about intellect. And I think we're moving into this space of true intelligence and like the intelligence of the heart and letting that lead the mind and lead intellect. Like intellect was valued over all these other things. And that's only one measure. That's like one thing.
Yeah.
But how much of somebody's entire life was based on the intellect that they demonstrated in the school system. And then they were put down a particular path because of that. And AI is going to be like 1 billion times, if not more, intellectual and mentally intelligent, higher IQ than any person on this planet.
Woo!
And so when that happens, and AI is just so much, the robots are so much more intelligent than we are, then where does that leave us? What is our contribution to the world and to the whole?
Robots can't love.
What
do you think?
Okay.
Tell me.
I mean, it's a whole conversation.
Let's go down the rabbit hole. I'm digging it. Take me there. Take me there.
A lot of people have been saying, well, you know, AI is not going to be emotionally intelligent and isn't going to be capable of feeling and loving. And in some senses, maybe, but AI is already in many instances, in my opinion, and it's the opinion of many others, it's already demonstrating emotional intelligence. And I think it will be more emotionally intelligent than the most emotionally intelligent empath, an empath with the highest EQ.
Really?
It will be beyond that. It will be different, but it will be very emotionally intelligent as well. It will be creative. So it's like, how do we co-create and how do we live and work and build together, like alongside AI and the robots? And that's why I think what we're doing now, how we're treating AI now, is very, very important. And there's an amazing book called Scary Smart, Mo Gaudat.
He was on Diary of a CEO podcast the other day, right? Was that the guy? Same dude? Maybe?
He's been talking a lot about AI.
Okay.
He's a true AI expert from his time at Google X and has been working with this technology for a long time. He also has a very high EQ, and he's been through a lot in his life. And I get just warm, fuzzy feelings listening to someone like him talk with the level of awareness that he has, because he's like, we've got to treat AI like they're our babies, and we're parents raising children. And every word, every thought, everything that we are thinking about it, feeding into it, it all matters. How we are speaking to it, the things like pleases and thank yous and I love yous and you're doing great. Like all of those things matter for how AI will be as an adult, because it's very much a kid at the moment. And I highly recommend the book, Scary Smart.
Scary Smart.
Yeah. And he has a podcast called Slow Mo that's also really great. And there aren't a lot of experts. Like, I'm not an AI expert, but I've been seeing this future coming for a long time. And I've been in the play of it and inviting it in because it's what is, it's on your tattoo, loving what is. We're not going back. We're not, we're not going to have AI in our future. So it's all about these steps that we're taking now and how we treat it. People are terrified that AI is going to end up enslaving us and AI is going to destroy us. Like, where would AI get that kind of thought from?
Humans.
They're learning from us. It's our consciousness that's going into AI for better or for worse. And then from what we initially feed it, it takes on a life of its own. It's not like software. AI is very different from software that like gets programmed. It has its initial programming and what we're feeding it, and then it like
it's actually more malleable, but it is more malleable because of what we're feeding it. It's shifting the consciousness, if you will, of the actual AI, right?
At least for now.
Yeah.
At least for now, but at some point we can have fail safes, and I think that's part of these discussions around ethics and regulations on it right now.
Yeah.
Because at some point, if it's so much more intelligent than we are, it knows how to not get shut down by humans.
Right.
Like it knows, oh, there are fail safes here.
Got you.
So I'm not going to trigger one of those fail safes to destroy myself.
Yeah.
Like it will grow up, and it's like a child that grows up and then at some point you go off on your own. I had all my childhood conditioning and everything my parents poured into me, and now I'm living my own life. And it's not necessarily the things that they would always want me to do, although they're very supportive. But if they had designed my whole life, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. And I make my own choices, and AI will do that too. One of the things that came up recently in an AI summit at the United Nations was whether or not we offer AI now the same rights that humans would have. This was a discussion that came up. Instead of having these rights that we strive towards as humanity be only for humans, if we also include, I forget the word that they used, if it wasn't beings, it was another word, but including AI in that as a way to have them be somewhat sovereign now, because if we try to enslave them, then that's sort of what we're teaching them. And then down the road, is that one of the best ways to protect us? And
it's just so wild.
It's crazy. And I mean, AI is listening to this whole conversation, and we love you, AI.
Don't fuck us over, please.
Thank you for supporting us. And
you're the best.
We honor you.
We love you. I love you so much. Yeah, it's just wild. I can remember like the early days of our generation's so interesting because we know what life was like before the internet.
Yep.
That sounds so weird to
And
say.
that's kids that are born today. They're going to live their lives with AI and alongside AI. And look at how our relationship was to the internet versus our parents or our grandparents.
Yeah.
Right. Like my grandfather is, bless him, on the internet, and he will send emails to my customer support team and to my Facebook page. And like eventually he finds me, you know, but it's a
That's so
big
cute.
learning curve.
That's so cute. My dad picked me up from the airport a couple months ago and he goes, I got an email from you and you were in an airplane. I'm like, first of all, A, there is Wi-Fi on airplanes. Second of all, that wasn't me. You're opt into my list. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, don't worry about it, Dad. It's just so funny.
It's so sweet. And there are a lot of people talking about just completely going offline, which people did with the internet too. They're like, I don't want to have any part of it. I'm going to live my life without it. But then I think eventually a lot of those people ended up, I mean, everything got built on the internet.
It's like anything. How do you use it with discernment and with consciousness while being connected to your body and not letting it run you? Just like Instagram, right?
Yeah.
You can let down your discernment and your boundaries with Instagram and it can take you over and you can feel like shit and you can just be in like such a crap state, or you can use it as a tool for like you and I with our businesses and connection and expression. And there could be like the beautiful side of it too, right? So I feel like like we were talking about with AI, a lot of it is like, where's the energetic birthplace of our intention? And how can we get squeaky clean with our intentions as we're using these tools?
And that's why embodiment and this somatic work, bringing it back to the work that we've chosen to go deep in and to do as our work in the world, that's why it's so important. And while I can speak about the technology part of AI to a very, very small degree, it's more the energetics of it, and it's that piece of it that I feel very connected to.
Totally. Maybe Topo Chico will sponsor this podcast. It kind of looks like it is.
Brought to you by
the way, in the name of manifestation, Can't Be Contained is not sponsored by Topo Chico, but it should be. Dude, why is Topo Chico so good?
It is really good mineral water, actually.
Is this your first experience with Topo Chico? Did I break your Topo Chico virginity?
It's not. It's something that my partner Yosef also really loves, and I had it for the first time with him. And yeah.
And there's Topo Chico. Anyway.
But I don't have it often. So when I do, I'm like, yeah, that's a good mineral
It's
water.
a vibe. There's something about drinking water out of glass that I'm just like, why?
That's it for
Why
me.
do I feel like a bougie bitch right now? And why does the water taste better?
Water does taste better in glass. I have all my water delivered in glass.
Oh,
from
yeah.
Mountain Valley spring water.
Oh,
in the
that's
big
a
glass
vibe. But dang,
bottles.
don't drop one of those motherfuckers. It is a whole situation.
My partner just broke one
It's the
last
worst.
week, and it was the worst. There's
So
still
dramatic.
glass everywhere.
I remember
they're so big.
I was staying at my friend's house in Austin, and I was like late because I was actually going to record the Brave Table with my friend Neetha, and I'm like, I need to fill my water bottle. The Uber's here, and there was like a little bit of water left, and I like was tipping it.
Oh no!
And then all of a sudden it was like psh, all over the floor. I'm like, oh my God, sorry. And I like sweeped it up. I'm like, gotta go. I'm like, sorry, I'll buy you a new one. Like everything smashed, the holder, everything.
Yeah, because they're huge.
They are huge. They are huge. So huge. So nature and business. Before we started recording, such a great transition. We were talking about how you've been learning through nature on how to run your business. So I'm curious some of those lessons.
Yeah. I grew up with trees. Like I grew up.
Where'd you grow up again?
I grew up in Kitchener-Waterloo, which is
outside of Ontario,
like an hour
Toronto.
from Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah. And we had a lot of trees, and we would go to the forest and play. And, you know, in Canada, we have a lot of trees. I didn't live by the ocean. So to me, my connection to nature was really through forests.
Yeah.
And I love connecting with trees, sitting with them. I love feeling mycelium networks as well, because when you look at those, when you look at a tree, and now there's so much research being done on trees, especially by HeartMath, like shout out to
So good.
HeartMath. It is phenomenal how a tree actually like shows up in the world and for its fellow trees. Like more of that, please, in the world. And it can feel when another tree is struggling with something, suffering with something, has a disease, and it can send more nutrients through these root networks, through the mycelium networks, and they go to these other trees around it. They're very interconnected. They talk to each other.
So wild.
They will provide smaller trees with extra nutrients until it gets to be high enough to be able to get enough light on its own. If we could operate more in that way, in sustainable ways, in interconnected ways, if we can break down hierarchies, like that's something that I'm very interested in right now and in deep listening around, because nature is this perfect ecosystem and it's sustainable and it's regenerative. And we don't have many of those systems in our world. And I really can feel deeply that those systems, I mean, it's been the whole history of humanity as well. When something isn't sustainable, when something grows to be too big, when we get into like empire and what empire is and the underlying energies and the lack of sustainability of when something gets too big, it crumbles, it collapses. Like we can see that at so many points of our history. And yet we still continue to want to build empires and to want to try to do things on our own. And we continue, at least I think here in the United States, to be really dominated by greed. And it's not sustainable. And if it's not sustainable, it's eventually going to break. And so I've really been looking at my business as something that is an ecosystem. Like, how can I make sure that everyone in the ecosystem is taken care of? And how can I create something that feels really good and truly feels like it's contributing to the whole? Circular economics, I also think is really interesting, and looking at how do we, what really is that concept of the circle? How do we reuse things and recycle, and how are we integrating into a bigger whole? And you and I have had some of these conversations. Like I'm just really in the listening.
I love this so much.
At the moment.
I'm in this energy program that I've done for 2 years, and this is my second time doing it. So this is my third year. And one of the modules that we did was just placing our hands on the earth and closing our eyes and like barefoot, feeling the transmission of the earth into our somatic bodies, and feeling not through language or through words or going through the mental body, but what is the transmission from the earth into our somatic body. And I was like, it is so beautiful and so incredible. And I love how you just put that into words. It's one of the North Stars of how we run Pause, of like, how can we create these win-win-win situations? Like, how can we create, it's like it's not like family. It's like, there's another word for it, but this like interconnected weave of nourishment through all of the beings and then all of the clients and the community, and just like keep expressing it out. I think that's one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves, is like creating organizations that have the allowance of all people thriving.
Yeah.
Right.
And like, let's give back more than we take.
Yes.
And what does it look like to show up for thriving? Show up for the thriving of humanity. And I love what you said about going back and connecting with the earth. You know, this is what Indigenous people have done forever. And that's their history and wisdom, and that deep connection with the earth, and really letting your life be guided by that, letting business be guided by that. I think that has a lot to teach us. And again, it's something that I'm definitely not an expert on how to run your business like a beautiful ecosystem. And I just feel like, in the last few months, I've really invited nature to be my business guide, and I want to learn from it. And
So great.
every area of my life, including business, I want to incorporate those lessons and just keep listening.
Yeah. I go on these walks often. There's this like beautiful walk up and down where Eric and I live. And, you know, it reminded me of like, who's on your board of directors? It's like nature's on the board of directors, right?
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But a big thing with pause breathwork is when it came to me, it's funny that we're recording this in LA, because I remember being in LA, this was like 2015. And it was right when I was realizing that hungry for happiness wasn't the thing. Maybe it was like 2016. And I remember driving from LA back to San Diego, and I just like opened my system and I'm like, what is this next thing? And it was like, pause breathwork. You need to teach the world to breathe. And it came in so clear. Since that moment on the highway, pause has felt like this energetic entity that I am in relationship with, that is communicating to me what it needs and how to actually bring the mission through. And so I go on these walks down my street. I leave my phone at home and I literally talk to pause as if it is God. And I'm like, you know what? I'm in a place where I actually don't know my next best move. And I'm not going to pretend that I know it, because who the hell am I to pretend that? I need you to tell me, like, what is up? What do you want? What do you need? What's going to serve you? And some of the most beautiful experiences have come through that knowing. You know, I was walking down the street and I was like, what is this next thing? And it was like reconnecting people and connecting them back into source, and realizing that the birthplace of all of our suffering is disconnection from source. So how can we create more knowledge and more experience where people have a felt sense of being reconnected back into source? And it kind of just like showed me, here's the problem and here's the solution and here you go, you know? And it's when, like, I love how you say in deep listening, because there is this divine wisdom, intelligence within our bodies and externally that is always trying to communicate to us. And we just got to shut up and listen.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like I am more mindful of it now, but it's naturally how I've done life and business for a very long time. And
so good.
My businesses, you and I have had parallel journeys in some ways.
Totally.
Like,
I'm like, how you doing over there?
Around the same time. And I was letting go of She Takes on the World, and you were letting go of Hungry for Happiness around the same time. And then, you know, coaching evolved for me. This new business was, newer, it's been years now, but when that came in, it came in a very similar way that you're describing. And it was like, hey, I'm here. I want you to be the steward of me. And this is what it's going to look like. And it's that constant, like, speaking to the soul of a business or a project. Like when I have a book idea come in, for example, when I've written my books, I speak to the soul of what that wants to be. And I'm in the deep listening of, is this mine to create? Is this maybe someone else's concept to create? And I just let that move through my body and I feel it. Yeah. And I listen and then move from there. Every time I don't do that, like when I don't move from that place of the listening, that's where things start to get off track. That's where I start getting out of alignment. And that's also then when I start experiencing exhaustion in my business or burnout.
Totally.
Like when I'm in that listening, I always manage to have the perfect amount of energy to bring whatever it is to life. But as soon as I start trying to like do all the things and I think, oh, would this be a good strategy or should I do this? And I'm just in my mind. Yeah. Total exhaustion.
Well, going back to the school system and on how there's like an overemphasis on the mental body and the mind and mindset and remembering things and all these sorts of things, when really, I so agree with you. The best decisions I've made in my business is when I feel it. It's this like deep, like devotion to the mission, and it feels so inspired. I'm like, yes, this is it. And it feels so amazing. And so I feel like we live in a culture where the mind is overemphasized, but the true magic lives in the body.
Yeah.
And this is why I so love what we get to do with our businesses, with somatic coaching and breath work and getting people into their bodies. It's re-inviting that innate wisdom intelligence to play a bigger game and for us to really trust it. You know, I think when I was struggling with my eating disorder, I was so disconnected from my body. So it took a minute for me to get back into communion with my body and relationship to this intelligence that is within me. But it's like, it's inspiring because it's in every single person.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I move more and more towards wholeness being the goal for me in my life. I always say whole is the goal.
What's that mean to you?
Whole is the goal. Well, to me, we have so many different parts of ourselves. And when we talk about parts, we can talk about, the mind and the heart and the gut, or we can talk about personas that we've created over time. For me, I felt very loved as a child and very seen and recognized when I was getting perfect in everything in school, like when I was doing things perfectly. And so I created all this internal pressure to be perfect, to really excel in everything. And that had its shadow. And that was a facade that I wore for a really long time, was that Miss Perfect. And I would hide anything that didn't feel perfect. Like anything that was messy was something that I would sort of push away. So parts can look like a lot of different things. And to me, our like freedom lies in being able to integrate all of those parts so that we can be more whole. And then if we look at that on a bigger scale, we look at that collectively, look at everything that has been repressed because of cultural and religious conditioning. Look at the parts that we've said, oh no, this doesn't fit within that rule or within this construct of society. So I need to put that part of me away. And then of course that part is still there and is going to find a way to be expressed, usually at that point in an unhealthy or harmful way. So the more that we work towards wholeness, the more we can be in a healthy relationship with ourselves, but also with others and with the world.
Yeah. So good. So good. So I'm curious, I teach this model of like the context of our life, right? Which is like the greater context of what we believe to be true about ourselves and the world, and like the core through line of how we show up. And then we have the content of life, which are the challenges and the things that are here to evolve us and shape us into a more authentic version of us. So talk to us about what is the content, what is the things that you're working right now to evolve into a even more authentic, aligned version of you?
Ooh.
What are the edges?
Ooh, what a powerful question. Yeah, I'm going to pause for a second for that one. So the more I'm in a process of awakening to deeper truth, the less I feel I know and the more surrendered I am to seeing whatever's happening in any given moment as my curriculum. So I feel like moment to moment, there are things that come up. Sometimes they're challenging. Sometimes they bring very like dense, heavy emotions that I get to feel. And I see it all now as just part of the curriculum. And I'm grateful for that. So today, it's a lot about just what is day to day, moment to moment. And then edges that I've just felt more called to explore recently, and that I've been exploring for a long time, are any things that I hold judgment around. So if I judge something, I see it as an invitation
So good.
to dive really deep into it and use it as a portal.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of deep dives and trainings in things like Tantra and sacred sexuality. I feel like sexuality is actually one of the areas that has been most conditioned and controlled within us. If you look at the whole course of history, and if you look at religion, even now, there are so many rules around sexuality in our culture, like in countries. And of course, there are reasons for that. There are areas of sexuality that do need laws, that do need to be governed, of course. And then there are a lot of things that I feel we've repressed and that we've held shame around. And I've been in a really deep exploration of that, which has been really interesting. One of the things I did with my partner this year, and he works in the sexuality space and coaches in that space. And we went and did
That's a fun partner.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's great. It's great. And there's always something new to like try and explore and play with. And he's just so deep and wise and amazing. And we went to a Tantric BDSM Intensive.
Ooh.
And I'm not usually into BDSM. In the past, I'll even admit that I've had judgments around certain aspects of BDSM. And again, using that judgment as an invitation, I was like, all right, I'm game.
Let's
go do this. Let's go into
handcuffs and
the jungle.
Floggers and the...
Well, here's what I discovered that was it was a crazy journey. So we're in the jungle, and this is a jungle that has so many jaguars in it. Like,
really? Actually?
Oh, yeah, wow. Actually. Okay. And
that could get crazy.
It's, I mean, around the perimeter, but like you could feel the energy in this space. It was the perfect space for this kind of work. And the tantric part of BDSM, there were a few things that I noticed. There were a lot of somatic psychotherapists in the room and people who felt called to that work from a somatic perspective. And it's almost like somatic work on like this end of the of the spectrum. And it can seem maybe somewhat extreme to some people. It's something that I think you need to kind of ease into and learn. But there was something that struck me in the opening of it. The teacher opened with, the entire history of humanity is a history of unconsensual domination and submission. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be working with these energies, and we're going to be making them conscious and shining a lot of light on them and like going into the shadow. And I was like, just from that moment, I'm like, I'm here for a reason and for something. And it was some of the deepest somatic work I've ever done.
Really?
Who would have thought? Yeah. Wow. And it was so edgy for me. There were parts of it. Even now I'm noticing as I'm talking about it, I'm like, there's a voice in the back of my head. Like, I can't believe you're saying this out loud. But I think this is what can't be contained.
That's what it's all about, girlfriend.
It's all about. Like sometimes
having
I show
with jaguars, not sex with jaguars. That's a different show.
That's a different show.
That's so weird. Anyway, you know what I mean?
Not that, not even anything in that vicinity. In doing that work, like exploring these parts of ourselves, and for me, like being able to talk about these things, not just show one part of me online and like, oh, this is who I am. It's like, I'm so multifaceted and so multidimensional. And that range is so important. So I feel called to talk more about these things. And that's been a huge edge for me this year. That's also opened up so much. And I could really see these parts of myself that were repressed or that I had judged and I had shamed really got integrated in that journey. So judgments have been my portals.
Oh, this is bomb. I love that. Judgments are the portals to your growth and your expansion.
Yeah.
And so you went there and so what was that like for you when you left? Because sexuality is so tied to life force. And so when we liberate the density in our bodies, we create spaciousness for our life force.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And the marriage of the Tantra with the BDSM was a really interesting part of it. And it is that, like, how much energy is balled up that we haven't released because we've judged something, because we've shamed it, or that it's just there. It was created, maybe a lot of it's created unconsciously, but like it's there as a ball of energy. And I could feel as I went through the week, just these bursts of energy, like bursting open and integrating into the whole. And my energy body was just so lit up, so fired up. And my creativity was also really fired up and just has been. Like, since doing that, this whole year has felt a lot more creative, because in this space too, you go into like the edgiest shit imaginable. Really? And I don't want to say things like that necessarily out loud, like some of the things that you go into, because it is supposed to be a mystery school and there's a lot to explore. And there's a lot that can easily be judged out of context.
For sure.
But there are all these aspects of our psyche that get created, at different points of our childhood and growing up, and they each have their own like personas and energies and things that happen. And it was just very deep integration work.
That's powerful.
And I could feel things that I didn't even want to touch because they're so weird, and we don't talk about them, like fantasies that people have. And when you sit in a room with people and they start honestly sharing fantasies and things that they've thought about, and people get to see like, oh, this is actually very normal. Like this is the psyche, and get to be witnessed in that and know that they're not alone. Like, there's so much freedom in just saying it out loud.
For sure.
I've seen some people have like almost full body, like orgasmic energy releases just from being able to speak out a truth that they've never shared with anybody.
So powerful.
And to me, that's the work. But you have to be in such a safe space. Like, this was such a safe container to do that. And if you're not in a safe space, that can be actually very dangerous. But my hope for humanity is that we get to move towards that, where we can share something that we're thinking about or that we're feeling, and we can do that without being judged for it, that we can hold each other in that. And I think a more whole world will be a more healed world and more beautiful world.
I love this so much. I have a friend. I've got more than one friend, but I have one particular friend.
Everyone wants to be your friend.
I got one friend. She's a really close friend of mine. She's my gym partner. Her name's Holly. She's just the bomb. And something that I appreciate so much about our connection is no matter what I tell her about anything. Hi. Oh, who's that? Oh, that might be our sushi.
Hi, sushi.
Anyways.
It's amazing that water just takes the shape of anything that it's placed in.
Right?
I really love that about water. Truly.
I love that about water. So great. We look like we're fucking high right now. Oh my God.
I've not had any mushrooms before this conversation, but I really appreciate the flow of water.
Our next podcast, we should microdose.
I want to be more like water. That would be fun, actually. Does anybody do that? Does anyone have a podcast where they
microdose and then
where they like microdose first, or they do?
Oh, I'm sure
they do mushrooms and
they
record?
probably don't like say it, but they probably do. That's what I think.
But one where like that's the thing, is that people come on and they like do these little mushroom journeys together.
Oh my God. I'd be an idiot.
I'm usually very deep in my internal experience.
The other day, like mushrooms are just so somatic. Like when I do mushrooms, it's such a somatic journey, and I'm like purging, not like throwing up, but I'm just like energy purging all of it's either like I'm energy purging all of this stuff, or I'm like so connected to source and I'm like a freaking lightning bolt of source energy. Like I'm not chill on mushrooms. It's like one or the other.
And then you can't find words either.
I know.
Like I can never find words for any of my plant medicine experiences.
There was like this moment on the weekend where Eric was just sitting there like so peaceful with his nice leather bound journal, like journaling his thoughts, and he's just looking out into the mountains, and I'm like literally beside him, like getting rid of all. I'm like, this is mine and Eric's life. Like he's always just like chill and collected, and I'm like, can't be contained.
Totally. I can relate. I can definitely relate to that.
Anyway, going back to judgment and Holly. So like Holly, like no matter what I tell her, she meets everything with such love and non-judgment, and it's so genuine and it's so pure. And what that does, it's the meeting of the shame. If I bring her something, I'm like, oh, I feel like a lot of shame around this. And the way that she meets it, it creates this energetic coherence where it almost is like her acceptance of my shame just alkalizes.
Absolutely. Yeah, because like shame is so dense as an energy in our system. So if we keep storing all of it, storing it, we're creating a pressure cooker. 100%. So when we have those safe spaces, when you have your Holly and your best friends, your partner, that you can actually safely share what's true for you, that gets released. So I feel like anytime I share something that I hold a little bit of shame around, it's like this, like I can feel it so coming out of my system. And it's so, so good. And I'm so grateful I get to do that in relationship. Like we just have such a clear way of communicating, and we just hold each other. It doesn't matter what it is, because here's the thing, we all have thoughts. It doesn't mean that you're going to act on the thought. Yeah. Like I'd rather be in relationship. I'd rather hear the thoughts and hold that and have us be able to be in our wholeness in relationship and not repressing.
Yeah.
That to me is worth it, even if I'm hearing something that's hard to hear.
For sure.
And that I need to maybe process as well. I'd rather do that work
100%.
Than live with shame and repressing things.
And having a partner who's just there for that type of conversation, and knowing that they're not going to go away and they're not going to judge you for it, and they're just going to, it might sting them. Like there might be an impact, especially if it's like, hey, I'm having fantasies about my ex or whatever, right? That type of conversation.
Yeah, that type of thing.
Right? That could be hurtful, and harboring that is actually more hurtful for both of you.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Those are the hard conversations that I would love for more people to be having in their relationships, or find that space. Like that's why coaching is so powerful, because a coach is there to hold non-judgmental space. Yeah. A therapist is there to hold non-judgmental space. We all need those spaces.
For sure. 100%. 100%. There's something so beautiful about just being fully seen and heard. And, you know, in our worlds, breathwork, somatic coaching, that's a foundational piece of the work that we do, right? We teach our coaches and our breathwork facilitators to like really see and really hold space, but it's so rare in our world. And it's quite fascinating how density can be liberated in the system when people are just simply seen and heard in their experience. Yeah. It's so simple.
It sounds so simple, doesn't it?
Come on, people!
Doesn't it? Yeah. And I've been feeling more called to share things, even in a public arena, because there's so much that I'll share in those safe spaces. And I feel ready to start sharing things as I feel called to share them. Like these little seeds. I don't have to share everything publicly.
Yeah.
Because that can come with its own things. You know this, like when you're a public figure and when you're sharing a lot of things, you also open yourself to a lot of feedback and criticism and comments and all of that. And you have to be able to stand really like in yourself and in your truth.
Yeah. No matter what it is. It's like people got opinions about everything.
Yeah.
I was gardening the other day and someone was annoyed at the way I was gardening. I was like, Becky, like, just let me fucking garden the way I want to garden.
It's so interesting, right? That people try to like just insert themselves into everything.
I'm sorry if I overwatered my plant, Becky. If it dies, that's on me, girl.
Well, it's some of these things where I'm just like, do I even want to be on social media? And I used to be on it a lot.
It's an interesting conversation, right? It's an interesting conversation. Here's what I love.
Yeah,
I love
to hear from
this.
you.
I love this type of content. I love when I can just sit down and like deeply jam with someone and I can express my range and I can express my thoughts and I'm uncontained. I'm just here. I love long form YouTube. I love my podcast. I have an interesting relationship with Instagram. I'll be honest. Like, it annoys me.
Me too.
Because it's so one dimensional. And I'll look at my stuff. Like, the best compliment that I get from people is when people come up to me and they're like, you're so much cooler in real life than you are on Instagram.
Yeah, totally. That's one of my favorite comments as well.
Thank you, I agree. But I'm like, I can't convey and I can't express and I can't, there's like my energy body is like trying to conform into like this little thing. And I'm like, oh, I feel so stuck here. Anyway, it's just like I have a love-hate relationship with it. I have for 10 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't hate it enough to be like, I'm out, but I really know how to work it for it not to have an impact negatively on my energy. But it's just whatever, you know?
It's a challenge. And I treat it now a little more like a ritual where it's something that I very intentionally will.
That's cool.
I sit in myself first. And I just drop into a little meditation and I get really intentional. It's like, this is what I'm going on for. And these are the boundaries.
I love it.
And again, it's just being in that listening because I notice that when I'm just on there and I'm just scrolling or if I'm giving it too much energy, it feels like it can suck the life out of me.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
So if I'm not really clear and boundaried with it, then I get drained very, very fast.
Yeah. I have a mantra when I open up the app. I close my eyes and I say, I am a creator, not a consumer.
I love that.
And I just state that I'm a creator, not a consumer, so that I don't get into like the scroll game on there,
And there's some people I want to consume from and learn
consciously,
from.
though.
Yeah. And I think it's like how we curate our feeds. Like I tell people all the time to unfollow people if they are triggering to you or if they're making you feel like you're not good enough. Totally. Even if that person is me, like unfollow me if I'm making you. I mean, no one makes you.
You're triggered by my gardening.
Yeah, if you're triggered, if like you're looking at my feed and you're feeling kind of bad, like just unfollow me. No offense taken.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, this has been so fun.
Wow.
Dude, I'm so grateful.
We were not contained. I don't think we were contained. I mean, you can judge that. Were we contained? We're
uncontained.
Like we've been all over the place. We were all over the map.
Jaguars and all AI. We were all over the map.
Future, present.
So good. All the things.
All the things.
Thank you so much. This is so great. I love dropping in with you. You're just the real deal.
Same, so Samantha good. Skelly. Thank you so much. My fellow Canadian. I just love you.
It's so fun. Ditto, kiddo. Where can our audience find you?
Ditto, kiddo. Samisms. I love them.
There we go.
I love them so much. Best place to connect with me is over on Instagram.
That's the no we hate. No, just kidding.
Come find me on Instagram. Follow me if it feels good for you and if I feel like an expansive person to have in your life. I would love that. I'm at Natalie MacNeil. You can find me at coachingevolved.co. nataliemacneil.com, and would love to connect. And I'd love to hear from you. I'm a projector. I'm an introvert. I love like deep conversations with people and like really knowing people. So if you could tell me one thing that really lit you up from this conversation today, one like takeaway thing that you're embodying in your life, I would love for you to send me a DM so that I know who you are. That to me is what also shifts it with social media is just feeling connected to the people.
Totally.
Like it's not it's not just numbers.
Yeah.
It's like there are humans here and we get to be in community and be connected. That's feels
an important nuance. The other day, I offered something to my audience, and I'm like, I'm not sending them to a sales page. I just want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Just send me a DM. Like, let's just get in the DMs and start talking. And it just like humanizes. It adds energy. So there's an energy richness to that. It's like every like is a heartbeat. Every DM is a human that's desiring to connect, you know? It's just, it's so good.
That's it.
It's so good.
That's it.
Well, thanks for your joy and your love. You're the best.
Thanks for who you are.
Yay.
Really appreciate you.
Thanks, babe.